We continue our exploration of the Maha Taṇhāsaṅkhaya Sutta. Middle length discourse is number 38, MN 38. And we came to the section that covers the summary of the arising aspect of the dependent arising, dependent origination, paticca. Again, just to recap, for all those who are newcomers, and this is the first video, let's say the first recording they're seeing or watching or hearing. This sutta, this discourse took place because of a certain wrong, in fact, evil idea, pernicious view that had arisen in the mind of, not just in the mind, but he was preaching it. One of the bhikkhus, one of the students of the Buddha, his name was Sati, who was a fisherman by trade previously, before becoming a bhikkhu. So his whole family had trained in that and lifestyle. So he was saying that no, there's a soul, there's a being, there's an Atman, as it goes in the Brahmanic traditions or even in the Vedas and Upanishads. So he was just carrying that same message, and he was teaching it, and he was not only that, but he was not claiming it that it was his own, but it was the teaching of the Buddha himself. So he was totally misrepresenting, he was lying, he was deceiving the teaching, he was, well, misappropriating his own position. He was not representing his own role as a bhikkhu. On the outside, he looked like a bhikkhu, but on the inside, he was very much a paribhajaka, or a wandering ascetic, or a Brahmin, or one of those. In this case, he was a fisherman who had those Brahmanic ideas that there is this consciousness that is unchanging, that goes from life to life, and that's what explains this whole, in their mind, reincarnation. Now, if you've studied or been exposed to Buddhism during the last 30, 40 years, in the West at least, you will know that there's this term that even became part of the Western lexicon, or especially in English. You look up reincarnation, and it's there in the Oxford Dictionary, for example, in other dictionaries, and people talk, it's part of the vernacular, it's part of the language that we use. It's in movies, it's in books, even by people who have nothing to do with, let's say, Asian thinking or Eastern thought or any exposure to it, but they use those terms. They use terms like kamma or karma without understanding. But if you've ever been exposed to, let's say, the reincarnation part, and if you've ever come across what the majority of the Western culture or the world nowadays actually approaches reincarnation, rebirth, they usually attribute it to Buddhism, which is wrong, because there is no reincarnation in Buddhism. Every time I say that, people, their eyes roll back. It's like, what? Isn't that what the Dalai Lama is? Isn't that what we've been taught and exposed to in the media? You know, this person dies, and before they die, they say, I'm going to go there, in this body, in this form, and you're going to find me there. So send some people over there and do those examine. These have nothing to do with the teachings of the Buddha. Nothing. This is all Brahmanic. What that means is the person is a person, is an entity, is a vijnana, is a consciousness that goes and inhabits now a different body. In fact, with the same, in fact, characteristics. There's a difference between reincarnation, which is a wrong notion, but it's all over the place. There's a difference between that and what the Buddha taught, which is rebirth. Huge difference. And that's what this sutta today is, happens to be the third part, which is the third week of us covering the sutta. We saw last week how extensively the Buddha was covering the various aspects of a person's existence, all involving one's relationship with experience, as in you see something with the eye, you hear something with the ear, etc., all the six senses. You have a feeling because of the contact that took place through these six doors. So that feeling, depending on the nature of it, if it's painful, pleasurable, or neutral, depending on those, one of those, you're going to have an attitude, a drive, either to shun it, to run away from it, to do the opposite, to run at it, towards it, grab it, wanting to have it be repeated, which is definitely craving, leading on to upadana, which is the grabbing, tenaciously holding on to the pleasurable. Or if it's neutral, neither pleasurable, nor painful or unpleasant, then what we do is we just hit it, with the mute button. It doesn't matter to us. In fact, we just go blank. We just don't care. What the Buddha calls, you have now willfully ignored it. Avidya. And that's why we remain as Puthujjanas, so long as we don't, break through, understand that the Paticcasamuppada is the gateway to freedom, to break the cycle of rebirth. So, but Sati was all functioning based on the premise that there is reincarnation. So I'll just recap it basically, like mentioning about the earlier section of the sutta, so people have an idea. Of course, the sutta is available complete on the website, mindreleased.com, and it's in the Pali Sutta section from the menu. So print it out, read it, make notes on it, and this translation, I hope it's it's really going to help with understand, because just to hear it or think that Paticcasamuppada, dependent arising, usually it's not going to get you far, because you're going to create ideas about it. And Paticcasamuppada doesn't have much to do with ideas, remaining ideas. You have to bring it into the laboratory of your life through your own living experiencing of things. That's why the Buddha would use anuloma and patiloma, the forward and the backward, scanning back and forth on the various links of the Paticcasamuppada, the dependent arising or dependent origination links, of which I just mentioned a few, such as the six senses, the contact, feeling, craving, tenacious grabbing, and of course, all of which lead to the desire to want to re-become. That's bhava, which takes you to jati, which is birth. And once you have that, you've reached birth, that point, you're stuck. You're stuck in the form of, you have to now face the music. You have to now face whatever comes because of jati. And what that means is definitely suffering will be there for you. Old age, sickness, and death. The Buddha was not interested in telling us, oh, you're going to have many, many opportunities to experience lovely, lovely things when you're born. That's always been a big if. In other places in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha says, as in the Book of the Ones, the Book of the Twos, and other places from the numerical discourses, the Buddha says, look around you. The people that you see on the planet, very few of them will come back as humans. The possibility for all these human beings who are human beings now, and it's not just 26 centuries ago, you can look around you, your own family, your own social circles, the world, those that you get to meet in person, as well as those that you know about existing. The possibility for human beings living on this planet now to come back and take on a human birth is far less than the higher, almost guaranteed possibility of them, humans, being reborn in the lower realms. We don't acknowledge this oftentimes. We go into that avidya mode, willfully ignoring mode, because but that doesn't relate to me, or that doesn't, but my group of circles, or no, that's in a different era, not now, Bande. It's not coming from me. It comes from the Buddha himself. And similarly, even to the Devas. The Buddha spoke about the Devas. He says, do you know that the Devas, who are countless, far more in number than all human beings in all the different planets, in all the cosmos, the Devas, when they die in their divine births, when it reaches the end of their lifespan, the possibility that they will again be reborn as Devas is far less than the greater almost certainty of them being born in the lower realms. In many cases, less than a human realm. That's why the Buddha was against those who would teach the Dhamma as if a gateway, as a passage or an opportunity for them to gain rebirth into the Deva realms, because they were very short-sighted, to say the least. Because once you're in the Deva realm, it's very difficult to come across the Dhamma, to be interested in the Dhamma even. As a person who goes through pharmacy after pharmacy, hospital, doctor, this specialist, when they are suffering from an illness, what happens to their attitude when they are not feeling the pain, no symptoms? Do you ever see them next to a medicine cabinet, a pharmacy, a doctor, a specialist? No, they're too busy being somewhere on the planet where they're enjoying themselves. And very few opportunities for them to do good meritorious actions for the Devas. Of course, this does not go for all Devas, but because many, many Devas had many good intentions in the past, good merits to desire to come to the Dhamma, had close proximity, had close associations with the Dhamma or the Dhamma practice themselves, which doesn't go away. It wakes up in the presence of the sasana when there is the Dhamma still available. They will scour the universe looking for anybody, any place that has a snippet of Dhamma still, and they will go and they will cherish it, like cherishing a tiny little candle that's lit in a stormy weather. You will treat it, you will protect it. That's what the Devas do, who have the Dhamma in their hearts. Majority of the Devas, however, no. So I'm mentioning these things because they're very much related with the understanding of the dependent arising. So it's not something, some theory, some conceptual, new principled teaching of the Dhamma that makes you sound interesting at a party or on a platform, conversation pieces that you have, different platforms nowadays for so-called Dhamma discussions, which should be cut to a very, very small minimum. But that's what you have in the world today. So you have many, many satis because of that in the world today. So, but the Buddha addressed sati, and now he's checking the other Sangha members, the other bhikkhus, whether they do entertain such thoughts as sati. So he interrogated, he questioned each point of the Paticca Samuppada to see if they really get it. And they answered correctly. Remember, many of these bhikkhus were the ones who told the Buddha about the presence of sati and the presence, unfortunately, of his wrong views, and that he was insisting to still continue to teach it like that to people and believe it like that. And then finally the Buddha said, okay, call him over. So he came, and the Buddha asked him, before the Buddha chastised or criticized anybody, unless it happened in front of his eyes, he would always ask, is this true? What I'm hearing about you? So he always gave the benefit of a doubt to the person being accused of anything. And Sati said, yes, Bhante, that's what I believe. And the Buddha said, well, to whom have you seen me teach this? Oh, you stupid idiot, worthless man. Whom have you seen me teach the Dhamma like this? Where do you get this stuff? Not from me. And that's what caused Sati to really get, droop and just hunched and just try to disappear in the presence of the Buddha. But he was too conceited, and he was not apologetic, and he still stuck to his wrong beliefs. Anyhow, big chunk of the sutta is not about him anymore. So the Buddha is just taking the opportunity to teach us the Dhamma proper in even bite-sized way, in such ways that we can consume and digest. So I highly recommend those listeners, watchers, seers of this YouTube channel, whatever it is, you go back to listen to the previous two parts of this sutta that I covered. Anyhow, with that having been said, let's go to the 7th section, which is summary of the section on the rising. So the bhikkhus just answered the Buddha correctly to his questions, meticulously placed questions, and they answered each one properly. And then the Buddha says, sadhu bhikkhus. Sadhu means good. Well done. So be it. You answered correctly, stating what I also have stated. That is, when this is present, then that too comes to be and manifest. Because of the arising and presence of this, then that also arises and thereby manifests. In other words, bhikkhus, in the presence of willful ignoring, avidya, which serves as their condition for being, dynamic patterns or habitual drives, sankhara, come to be and manifest. Remember, people say, the beginning of the paticca is avidya paccaya sankhara. Because of, conditioned by ignorance, there are people say mental formations, but as I've mentioned many times, they don't do anything for me, that English translation. That's why I like to use habitual drives, or even better, dynamic patterns, which underlie all our thoughts, speech, communication, be it verbally expressed or especially subvocal speech, and physical actions. So the 3 types of actions. So the Buddha is now doing it the other direction, meaning starting with avidya to sankhara. And in the presence of dynamic patterns or habitual drives, sankhara, which serve as its condition for being, consciousness comes to be and thus manifests. And when there is consciousness, then there is the very condition which brings about the arising of name and form. Consciousness is vijnana. So here is where Sati was stuck. To him, consciousness, by the way, Sati is not the only one. You open up a book on philosophy, or nowadays New Age thinking, one of the biggest topics today, and for many people doing their dissertations, their PhD, their doctoral thesis is basically based on foundation or the topic that they've chosen in many places. One of them was a fellow colleague in the academia, is the topic of consciousness. So that's the new sacrosanct theme these days. And the whole point is to merge that with technology. These are the new technologically more advanced modern day satis that are running around promoting this idea of permanency, of a soul, of a consciousness. I remember some years ago when people were going, scientists from different disciplines were going to Dharamsala in India to meet with the Dalai Lama because he wanted to have these opportunities, or I guess, to connect between what he represented as Buddhism, which is incorrect, because he's only a representative of one aspect of Tibetan Buddhism, let alone for the whole of Buddhist traditions. Anyhow, so these scientists would come, and that would be an interesting platform for dialogue. And some of the individuals, some of the Western scientists, you would have people from, theoretical physicists, astrophysicists, or physicists, biologists, psychologists, et cetera, manyists, and who are very, respectable in their own arenas and fields in academia, many articles, many publications, reputable scientists, basically. So they would ask questions, and one particular question was pertaining to machines, robots, specifically artificial intelligence. And he said, well, yes, it could have a consciousness. And I was impressed when I read that about 30 years ago or something, 25, 30 years ago. Wow, such a, avant-garde way of thinking, forward thinking, ahead of his time. That says so much about my own avidya. But that's what you have when you're not informed well enough. Because when you go to the suttas, which I did, directly to the Pali suttas, and you start looking at what people have been saying ever since the Buddha spoke and taught the Dhamma from the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, turning the wheel of Dhamma in Isipatana, the Deer Park. From that moment on, people have been, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, misrepresenting the Dhamma. So this consciousness is not a consciousness that is like a soul. That's the responsible. Remember the connection here to the six senses. The Buddha taught six consciousnesses, and that's it. Eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness. That's it. There's no capital C consciousness. There's no capital V, vijnana type of a consciousness. This has to be repeated. I mean, you've heard me say it many times. The Buddha has said it countless times. So in the presence of name and form, nama-rupa, there is then the very cause and condition for the manifestation of the six sense spheres, because they support each other. They back each other up. Without name and form, you cannot have the six senses functioning, six sense spheres. Why spheres, by the way, some might ask? Because we never take the eye by itself. The eye, because picking on the eye, let's say, because I mentioned eye consciousness. Usually it's the first one to be listed, right, in the suttas. So eye consciousness needs a visible object, but that's not done yet. The meeting of these two brings about eye consciousness. Remember, there needs to be light. There needs to be, the attention to be looking in that direction, because you might be looking in the direction of something that is visible, but you still can't see it, right? Because you weren't paying attention. The moment you do, boom, it's there. And when we say it's there, that means the spark of eye consciousness happened because of these factors coming together. But eye consciousness, or eye by itself, doesn't exist in the Dhamma. And when we say the eye, sometimes people think about the optic nerve, the eye, the actual physical anatomical organ of the, no, that's not. We just use that as a reference, because if you ask a physiologist or anatomist, they're going to say, well, actually, the perception of the eye doesn't happen at the eye. It's not even with the rods and cones. It happens further back in the cortex, which is true. So all of that combined, because the Buddha did not teach anatomy, okay? He was not an anatomist. He was not a physiologist. He was using the language that was available to people, using references to things that made sense to the listeners in a way where it was so powerful that it made an impact, and they understood the deeper layers of knowledge, of understanding, which allowed them to break free and attain. So when we say sixth sense spheres, the whole package goes into that. Okay? Similarly with the ear, therefore, audible sound, because you can't hear what dogs hear sometimes, right? All that with the ear, same thing with the nose, same thing with the tongue, the body, and the mind, which is the most complex, right? Once the six sense spheres come to be, then they come to serve as the condition for contact to manifest. We cannot have contact take place without there being the six sense spheres. At the very least, the mind has to be there to run through all this so we can become aware of it, to make contact happen. Otherwise, you're not contacting. Meaning there is no, it doesn't register. The experience doesn't register. There needs to be contact. The presence of feelings, and with contact being present, then there is the cause for feelings to occur and come to be. Feelings don't happen like that. Just fall out of the sky. Haphazardly take place without first there being contact. Contact has to be made. Feelings are not some blessings we get hit by some mysterious means. No. Remember, this is still addressing Sati's wrong view. Because at the premise of wrong view, remember from the Brahmajala Sutta, the first sutta from the Digha Nikaya, which we covered weeks and weeks on. One of the deeper suttas, in fact, it is the first for a reason out of 34 deep, long suttas. Because people like to latch on to either eternalism or nihilism. That things come to be out of nothing. And the other one is the opposite, says things go poof into nothing. It's comforting because it doesn't make you think. The Dhamma makes us think, which is very uncomfortable for the lazy people, putujanas. Don't forget, most of us are putujanas still. It requires work. It requires work. It requires at least a desire for you to be mindful in a busy, busy, busy day. But that is going against the grain of laziness. When we don't want to do something, we will find every reason in the world not to do it. In fact, they are no longer reasons, they are excuses, plain and simple. Why, though? Because we're comfortable being where we are. That's it. But if you do want something, to do something, you only need one reason, and that is wanting to do it, love for doing it. Just one. That's it. You don't need excuses. You don't need reasons. You don't need pages and pages of excuses to justify you not wanting to do it. Because you want to do it. That's the reason. That's it. So this is part and parcel of Dhamma. Do you see the connection with your life? The Dhamma is not separate from your life. That's what I keep saying. That's what the Buddha said for 45 years. But people like to complicate things. But it takes effort to come outside of your comfort zone, to challenge your beliefs, to challenge your whatever you're cozy with, because it feels nice for now until something big happens to you and now you're desperate. That's when people come and latch on, try to jump on the Dhamma wagon to relieve suffering. But there's no change happening at all in them. That's why the Paticca should not be some conceptual acrobatic for us, intellectual acrobatics. The presence of feelings that then serves as the condition for craving to arise and manifest. That's tanha. Craving with its constant thirst for more of things that you desire. And when craving, along with its constant thirst for more, comes to be, you have the very condition for wanting to grab and hold on. That is upadana. And once upadana is there, depending on how intense it is in you, in your mind, how much you carry that attachment to the thing. It could be people, it could be things, it could be a profession, it could be a title, it could be habits, it could be your garden, it could be your pet, it could be the way you want the sky to look. Anything. It's not the thing itself that's the problem, it's our attachment to it. That's the problem. Because there was a point in time for you to latch on and hold on to it. Before that, it didn't exist for you. So do you see the relevance? That's why I'm giving so many different examples from life, from real life, that we can resonate with to bring the Paticca into something that is pragmatically there, practical, applicable for us to use in our daily lives. And once grabbing takes place, which is upadana, once it's there, locked in, then the desire for re-becoming manifests and comes to be. Remember, re-becoming, the desire for it is bhava, not existence. That's a wrong interpretation, wrong translation of the term. Oftentimes I see many translations of this where they use bhava as existence. And then they say jati, birth. Well, what's the connection? Existence and jati. When you say existence, something is there already. Something technically is born. In order for something to exist, one would argue, you have to be born. There is no logical explanation for that. People need to be more responsible in the way we translate Pali. Last week I was mentioning the importance of pronouncing Pali correctly. It's very important for us to correctly pronounce, because it cuts the possibilities for us to really understand the meaning of those words. So, in the presence of that desire to re-become, then you have the cause and condition for birth to take place. So now birth has taken place. And the Buddha says, when birth has occurred, then what follow as a result are illness, aging, and death, which bring with them much sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and utter anguish. It is therefore in this manner whereby this whole mass of suffering comes to be, as it keeps piling up one after another. One big mass, a mountain of suffering. We always think this happens to someone else. We always think that it's not for me. I mean, I'm kind of immune, or I'm an exception. But when we consciously interrogate ourselves and see, really, is that possible? And you say, of course not. But emotionally, unconsciously, on a non-conscious level, viscerally, that's how we feel. That's why we want to repeat a pleasurable experience. We want to have it repeat. When we lose someone, what do? The brain wants to find out, what can I do to regain that experience? If you lose someone, if you lose a place, if you lose a thing, life comes, and that's how it is. There's going to be suffering, because this thing that you're holding on to, it could be a vase, it could be a mug, it could be a computer, it could be your favorite dog or your pet, could be your title, your loved one, your mate, your house, anything. But all of this is conditioned. It is there in front of you, next to you, attached to you, because of conditions. You take out one of those conditions, and the whole thing falls apart. It became the thing for you based on many factors. And everything in existence is based on factors, elements, variables, puzzle pieces. And by this very presence of it being conditional, based on conditions, it exists, it is temporary, impermanent. It will slip through your fingers. In fact, it has not stopped from slipping through your fingers. You just haven't noticed it yet. The body is a perfect example. Look in the mirror. It's slipping through your fingers. Wrinkles, it doesn't function the same, etc. Looks different. All conditionality, but we refuse to see it. Section 8, clarification of the forward sequence on cessation. So now the Buddha is going to approach it from the other angle, meaning from the position of cessation. So meaning, if you take this out, what happens to the thing that was supported by this thing? So if I take away the table upon which this laptop was sitting, what will happen to the laptop? It will fall. Why? Because the substrate has been pulled away. The thing which was there as its support is no longer there. Essentially, that's what cessation is referring to here, but in reference to the links of dependent arising. So as we go on, you'll see it better and better. On the other hand, bhikkhus, through the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of willful ignoring, avidya, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of the dynamic patterns or habitual drives. So now, you take away avidya, you also have taken away sankhara. That's why it's not a mystery. It's not a mystical experience. People have treated sankhara, dynamic patterns or habitual drives, as things that we have zero control over. In fact, that is how many books trying to elaborate or clarify Paticcasamuppada say, not just now, but for centuries. Commentaries have written that you cannot do much with them. But somehow some magical thing happens, and when the person becomes an arahant, boom, gone. The sankharas are gone. Well, what happened? There's a certain methodology that has to be followed. Everything about the Dhamma has clear explanations. Why is this an exception? Nobody explains. No commentary explains. In fact, as in Venerable Buddhaghosa's explanation of the Paticcasamuppada, the 12 links, he divided them into 3 sections, as I mentioned the first day. One part has to do with your past life, which you have zero control over. No, you don't have any control over. What's happened in the past? I'm sorry, I want to change, but I can't. And then there's a middle section, which has to do now with your life now, which you have control over, hopefully. And then what comes after? That's the bhava, the jati, and all those. And that has to do with your future life. Again, you have no control over. How is this Dhamma? Nobody bothered to come and ask Venerable Buddhaghosa when he was writing these commentaries, where do you get this from? What's your source? Because the Buddha never says anything like that. In fact, the Dhamma is, the quality of the teaching of the Buddha is that it is sanditthiko, immediately effective, visible right here and now. You have control over what and how life manifests. for you if you have the presence of sati, understanding. That's why a person can change. You have the freedom of choice to either have sati here or not. Most of us don't. But when you say the person, that part of the paticca falls into the past of the person, you just gave them a carte blanche saying, oh, it's not your fault. What? Or you have no control over it. What? How can I investigate something if it's in the past? How can I make changes to it if it's in the past? And it's definitely out of my control. How? What is this? Nonsense. That's what it is. But that's what people have been getting. Nonsense. And complicated nonsense, which makes them come across as, oh, this got to be deep. It's not. So sankhara, people have treated as a thing that is there, but then from one moment to the next, all of a sudden, the person becomes an arahant, sankharas disappear type of. No. Whenever you have presence of sati, and sati that is strong, whenever you have sampajanya, which is full awareness and it is strong, you will be able to detect the entry of sankhara into your mind, into the drive to want to say something. If there is sati, you will see, what is that tendency? What is that? Why do I feel like I have to say this? Or act like this? What is that? You have just pulled the brakes on sankhara, by the way. But what most of us do is we act on it. When the sankhara come in, we don't question them. They are allowed unquestioningly to be turned into, to manifest into further manifestations of whatever they were pushing towards. Habitual drive. It's a drive. That's why you will end up having the tendency to do, sankharas are of two types, right? The nature. One is kusala and the other one is akusala. Most people will do the akusala, allow the manifestation of akusala sankhara. But as far as the Dhamma, as far as the Buddha was concerned, they're both the same, ultimately, because they create agitation. So a person who does good deeds, who helps this person, this and that, and they especially, they're occupied, they're agitated by that, the Buddha says, okay, the most they're doing is they're accumulating good merits, period. Sooner or later, they're going to fall back into lower and lower realms. People, rich people, powerful people used to do so many good deeds. People who are killing people in the world, functioning, royals, elites, very, very powerful, rich CEOs that you know about, hear about, feel disgusted about. They've done so many good deeds that will blow your mind in the past. And that's why they're in those positions. What are they doing now? It's appalling. It's appalling to you. What happened? Well, that's where their good deeds brought them to, because it put them in a position of power, prestige, resources. But it does not guarantee Dhamma. It does not guarantee purity of ethics. It does not. That's why they do the most heinous things, these powerful people, especially nowadays. Disgusting things. There's cannibalism going on in the world. There's genocide going on in the world, and people are just flipping the page. Do you see the relevancy of the Dhamma to life? But this is where your choices have to change. By understanding Paticca, your life has to change. Otherwise, what is it? You're wasting time. Really. Go read a novel. Might be actually better for you, perhaps. But there's an understanding, therefore. The sankhara will be stopped dead in their tracks the moment you have awareness of them. So you do not automatically have to act them out. They should not be granted the carte blanche, the ability to continue in the mind when there is awareness. You have to put the spotlight on them. And that's why I spend the time explaining all these things in nitty-gritty detail, so you have a better understanding when you're confronted by them, which is all the time. Sankharas don't show up, in the fourth month of every 16 years, on a Thursday in an afternoon at 4 p.m. No, they're happening all the time. But we're just not aware that they're happening. So this is the reason why the Buddha went through so much pains to explain to us patiently, link after link, going back and forth in different ways, asking the same question to make sure the student understood. With the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of dynamic patterns or habitual drives, Sankara, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of consciousness. You see? You're pulling one table after the other, one domino piece after the other. And if you pull it away, all of a sudden, you remember last week I said, if you have laid out vertically domino pieces side by side and you just touch one and it starts falling, the whole thing will fall. Everything will just, they might look pleasant, interesting. But if you take away one piece placed in a critical position, you take that out of there, suddenly one of those links will come and poof, one of those pieces will fall, but there will not be anything there for it to touch it, to topple it. There you go. You attained. You attained. It's an experiential reality. Not because you think you did, not because others have told you. You know. And that's another thing, the attribute of the Dhamma, where the Buddha says, Pacchattam vedittabho vinyuhi. It is to be realized by the wise for themselves. By themselves. It's very personal, the Dhamma. It's about you. How much you make it about you, that is your prerogative, your decision. Otherwise, you're just going to be sticking your nose into the window pane outside the bakery, outside the candy store. With the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of consciousness, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of name and form. Because, again, the Buddha is now going, cessation aspect of things. So he's going, removing one piece, the previous link of this, and by removing that, this falls too. Because there's nothing to support it, because it came about because of that thing which you just removed from underneath its feet. The ground has been pulled away. So there's no way that name and form is going to show up when there is no vijnana. And similarly, we're going to see, with the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of name and form, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of the six sense spheres. Six sense, because they rely on nama-rupa. With the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of the six sense spheres, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of contact. When you don't have the six sense spaces, contact is not going to happen. Do you see how the Buddha is so meticulously addressing the thing from different sides? I gave you the image from a long time ago when I was 18. And I went and started taking classes in the Fine Arts Academy. And we used to be taught how to draw. It's called naturemort. It's like, just objects, anything. they would just put, the teacher would bring fake fruits and things, or a mug or a glass or a vase or objects, and place it in the center of the room. And students would be sitting all around on our stools trying to draw it, the object. But I was always curious. I wonder, what are they seeing? I'm seeing this side of the object. I wonder what my friend over there sitting across from me on the other side of the objects is seeing. Probably they're thinking the same thing. And the professor or the teacher would go around us, make corrections, this and that. And we would never be able to capture all sides of it, each of us, on our own. So the Buddha is now showing us the different aspects of Paticcasamuppada from different angles, different ways of seeing, of explaining, so that the student gets a fuller, more wholesome picture of what it is that the Buddha is teaching. And that's another reason to understand the Dhamma to be non-linear. That's another thing. People think that it's this way. That's it. Don't go back. Don't do. It's not linear. It's very organic. That's why you can make it your life. That's why you can bring it in and then chip away the pieces of your life that don't go hand in hand with the Dhamma. Not chip away the Dhamma. That's what many people do. They have to bring and negotiate aspects of the Dhamma into their lives because they don't want to change their lives. That's a big problem, and you're not going to get far. You're living a deceptive reality. It's not real. You're lying to yourself. With the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of contact, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of feeling. With the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of feeling, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of craving. By the way, did you notice? The Buddha is putting an effort to say remainderless fading away. That means it has been uprooted. There's not like a little bit of it left, hovering somewhere, tiny little bit. No, it's gone. There's not a chance in the world. And that's when craving disappears, because you got rid of feeling. Now, remember, when the Buddha is not advocating for people to become a vegetable, go into a coma or something. Even that is debatable whether the person doesn't feel, by the way. We don't know. But for all intents and purposes, observing it from the outside, we think that the person should not be feeling, but we don't know. But remember here, when you see the term remainderless fading away of contact, of feeling, of craving, etc., whatever the case may be, the Buddha here is teaching us the same thing he taught Bahya. Meaning, when you see something, don't get pulled into the details of whatever it is you're seeing. When seeing, he said, you must train yourself to just see. There's just seeing. Now, that doesn't mean that the person who is seeing somehow magically cut off feeling entirely. There's a nuance here that many people miss. When you get sucked into the story of what it is that you're seeing, hearing, smelling, etc., you are no longer seeing. You are already caught in the feeling. In fact, when you are already feeling, you are this close, one and the same, in fact, with the craving that feeling generates. You see? So when the Buddha says, fading away of feeling, that means there is a very strong sati. Nothing is escaping your gaze. Mindful, very alert gaze of seeing that you're seeing. But not just that. I don't want it to become like sounding esoteric or metaphysical. No, none of that. We don't do that here. We don't do that in the Dhamma. There's no place for that. When you are alert, when you are knowing that you are seeing this object, the moment you notice the arising of some form of feeling, whether it's hateful, generates disgust, let's say, or unpleasant feeling, you know it. You know it. The moment it is generating a pleasurable feeling, you know it. You don't wear it. You don't inhabit it. You don't enter into that feeling. You know it. Guess what? It doesn't have a hold on you. Guess what? It fades away. And what happens then? Does craving arise? Why doesn't it arise? Well, because there's no feeling at that point. Feeling that's embodied, that's you're one and the same with. That's when you know you're going to have craving. It's there. So don't treat these words as, oh, this is far beyond anything I know or experience. Cessation of feeling. What does that mean? I'm going to be dead? No. Fading away of feeling or contact or whatever it is that's been discussed, or cessation of it, is the same as what I was referring to earlier. To put a stop to it, bring it to a dead end stop immediately, dead stop of the thing that you were pondering, you were lost in, you were creating stories, papanchas with. The only way you could do that is in the presence of sati. That's why sati is indispensable. You have no time to be in absent-minded mode. Otherwise, because you're working against countless eons of lifetimes that you have lived deluded. This just happens to be one of them where you want to put a stop to that, however. So you have to change your attitude towards life, towards experience. Instead of saying to yourself, well, let me just go and enjoy this much too. Next life or next year or when I'm 60 or 80, that's when I'll make more of a strong effort, exceptional effort, and realize what all these terms mean. That means you're still playing the old game of putucana. Sati is powerful. Full awareness, sampajanya, is powerful. Your daily practice of sitting is powerful. Your sila is powerful. Your dana, scraping away with a knife as if the stains of stinginess, miserliness, whatever they might be, whatever type they might be, cutting that is powerful. Practicing meditation to purify the mind is powerful. Studying the suttas, trying to understand what the Buddha is talking about, even if you don't understand, putting an effort is powerful. Understanding that there could be other existences, beings such as the devas. Wow, that's powerful. The Buddha continues. With the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of feeling, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of craving with its constant thirst for more. Taṇhā also disappears. With the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of craving with its constant thirst for more, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of grabbing and wanting to hold on. Now, if there's no taṇhā, there's no tenacious grabbing, there's no upadana. You don't have to worry about it anymore. It doesn't come up. With the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of grabbing and wanting to hold on, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of the desire for re-becoming. So now, if there's no upadana, there's no tenacious grabbing for another becoming, there is no desire for re-becoming. Because you're not grabbing onto anything. That's why an arahant does not come back to any form of becoming. There is no upadana. It has been eradicated, removed fully from the heart of the arahant. That is why they do not take on any rebirth. Not because they have now got enough credits that they no longer have to come back. There is no place in their heart for any kind of grabbing, any kind whatsoever, including to the Dhamma. They're free from the Dhamma as well, if you want to call it like that, say it like that. With the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of the desire to rebecome, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of birth. With the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of birth itself, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of illness, aging, and death, along with the elimination of all the sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and utter anguish that they would have brought. It is therefore in this manner whereby this whole mass of suffering comes to cease and no longer occurs. So, do you see? Is it making more sense? One of the terrible things that we could do is to rush through the Paticcasamuppada, especially a beautiful sutta like this, deep sutta. It's a deep sutta, we know that. But it's necessary for us to put the effort to expose ourselves, the mind, to the laser-like precision of the Buddha's teachings when it comes to, in this case, Paticcasamuppada, the dependent arising, because this is crucial. Do you see why over the centuries so many people went the easy route and said, no, just about the faith. Have faith in the Buddha. In fact, he's over there. Say, chant this sutta, say name of the sutta, sutra, actually. And you're going to be over there in that realm once you die. What am I doing while I'm alive? Oh, you're just chanting the sutta. What is it saying? Oh, it's the name of the sutra. How is that going to help? Nobody asks, but it's definitely easy. Go make donations. Go light the candle. Go to Uposatha every, fortnight. Okay, that's fine. The Buddha would teach lay people to do that. But there's ways of practicing Uposatha. The student is practicing Dhamma, is studying the Dhamma, is practicing Sila, is practicing Dana, is practicing Bhavana. They are trying to live the Dhamma, but especially to probe. That's why they have to go, they have to expose themselves to Dhamma. Unfortunately, we don't do that, or we have our favorites. Usually it involves easy topics. That's why there's about 3 or 4 suttas from the Pali suttas that when you go to temples, abbots or monks are supposed to, remember reciting them. And what about the other suttas? They don't even know the meanings of these suttas, like, Ratana Sutta and Mangala Sutta, etc., or Metta Sutta. Beautiful suttas. They're full of meaning, but we don't even pay attention to what it is saying, let alone suttas like this. Why am I spending time on this? Because it's important. Why? Because the Buddha, Venerable Sariputta, the general of the Dhamma himself, has said, the person who understands Paticcasamuppada understands the Dhamma. When a person says, I understand the Dhamma, what that also entails, what that means is that the person also understands Paticcasamuppada. Now, do you need to explain the Paticcasamuppada to anyone necessarily to be known or to know yourself that you know Paticcasamuppada? No, you don't. There were arahants who could not teach the Dhamma, by the way. They're arahants, perfectly awakened. 4th stage, but they couldn't teach. They didn't know how, or they didn't have the necessary merits, perhaps. The Buddha explains that there are people. But that doesn't mean that they don't understand the Dhamma. To express it is different to someone else. To show it is different than to know it oneself. So there's that. distinction also to be made. So I'm saying this so that you do not overburden yourself by an added pressure of, oh, I have to know this, and I have to, what if somebody comes and asks me, how am I going to explain cessation? Don't worry, it'll come to you, whatever. There's so many similes that the Buddha gives anyhow. Even in the sutta we saw. Now we get to section 9, which I want us to do today. But I thought for some reason that we could possibly finish the sutta today, but it's not going to work unless I speed through it, and I cannot do that. It's not fair to the Dhamma, not to you. It's not fair. It's not right. So we just will continue doing this section 9, and then we'll stop, and we'll continue from next week. All right. So if you have any questions, please hold on to them, write them down so I can address them after I've covered this section. So section 9, question and answer on cessation in its reverse sequence. What? Now, bhikkhus, I just stated how, with the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of birth itself, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of illness, aging, and death. But do you also see it, or do you not, bhikkhus? How, with the cessation and elimination of birth, what follows as a result is a cessation and elimination of illness, aging, and death. Or how is it that you understand this point? The way we understand this point, Bhante, is the following. Illness, aging, and death all cease and are no more as a result of the cessation of birth itself. So the Buddha is holding the hand of the student, saying, do you get this? How do you understand it? So their answer is, illness, aging, and death cannot possibly occur if there is no birth, Bhante. We get it. That's wonderful. Let's move on to the next one. Because I also stated how, with the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of the desire to re-become, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of birth. But do you also see it, or do you not? Because how, through the cessation and elimination of the desire to re-become, what follows as a result is the cessation and elimination of birth itself? Or how is it that you understand this point? The way we understand this point, Bhante, is the following. Birth itself ceases and is no more when the desire for re-becoming is eliminated and thus has ceased. So when there's no bhava, the desire to re-become, then there's no birth, Bhante, to speak of. Something I want to highlight here is, for years, whenever I used to come to one of the suttas as a layman, I would either read a few sections of it and go on to something a little bit more appetizing, because I was too lazy, because I didn't want to overwork my neurons, basically. It requires effort for you to maintain. And then I noticed how I was not reading the full sentences. Oh yeah, it's okay. It's craving. Next is upadana. Okay, next is bhava. Next is jat. Okay, it's the same thing. Why should I read the whole thing? That is a tendency that we have to overcome. You see me mentioning every single, repeating, reading every single word here. The objective is for us to do that, and not to, especially when this is in the recording stage. I mean, post recording, so it's there available somewhere, and you have the option of fast forwarding it. Do not do that. Not because I'm saying so, but because you will be forcing yourself to miss a grand opportunity. So things that come easy don't mean that they are good for us. Look around you. The world has been going to the easy, and that's why it doesn't have much difference between, people who lived, centuries ago or thousands of years ago, unevolved, violent people. It requires work. Anything that is worthwhile requires work. Anything that comes easy is not worthwhile having, really, when you think of it, if you're living on this planet. So please don't blank out either when you're hearing me repeat this section by section. When we get to another sutta, let's say the Chachakka Sutta, Sutta number 148 of Majjhima Nikaya, 6 sets of 6. It's all a drill, a fantastically full of poignant statements that have this commonality of repeatability, repeating, but it drives the point home. It will destroy the crystal palaces of illusion in your mind. And it will bring you to aha moments. So the Dhamma is not, practicing the Dhamma is not sitting in a quiet place, making sure there's no noise outside, or getting into some deep absorption. That's not necessarily Dhamma. It needs this more than anything. But do you also see it or do you not? Because how, I think I read that. No, I didn't. Because how through the cessation and elimination of craving along with its constant thirst for more, what follows as a result is the cessation and elimination of the desire for rebecoming itself. Or how is it that you understand this point? The way we understand this point, Bhante, is the following. The desire to rebecome itself ceases and is no more when craving, with its constant thirst for more, is eliminated and thus has ceased. So when there is no tanha, craving, constant desiring, then as a result, there is no upadana, the tenacious grabbing. It's no longer there because there's no craving to begin with. Previous link. It's conditioned. Because I also stated how with the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of feeling, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of craving with its constant thirst for more. But do you also see it or do you not? Because how through the cessation and elimination of feeling, what follows as a result is the cessation and elimination of craving along with its constant thirst for more. Or how is it that you understand this point? The way we understand this point, Bhante, is the following. Craving with its constant thirst for more ceases and is no more when feeling itself is eliminated and thus has ceased. Similar mechanism. So now we're just retracing our steps with the objective of looking at the cessation aspect of the links. Because I also stated how with the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of contact, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of feeling. But do you also see it or do you not? Because how through the cessation and elimination of contact, what follows as a result is the cessation and elimination of feeling. Or how is it that you understand this point? The way we understand this point, Bhante, is the following. Feeling ceases and is no more when contact itself is eliminated and thus has ceased. When there is no contact, there's no feeling. Because I also stated how with the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of the 6 sense spheres, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of contact. But do you also see it or do you not? Because how through the cessation and elimination of the 6 sense spheres, what follows as a result is the cessation and elimination of contact. Or how is it that you understand this point? The way we understand this point, Bhante, is the following. Contact itself ceases and is no more when the 6 sense spheres are eliminated and thus have ceased. Every single one of these links, when it says ceased, it's basically describing the presence of strong sati. That is how they cease. Because you can clearly see you're no longer pulled into any kind of story And when I say story, I mean there is no sense of identification. There is no sakkaya ditthi. There is no atta personification or taking it as a substantiality there somewhere in the feeling, the contact, or even in yourself, as a thing, as a person, as a soul, as a me versus a you. And that's what happens when a person really goes deep in meditation. They come back and they say, they're like shocked. Some students, why? I ask, and they say, I have a difficulty. Like the outline is going away, Bhante. What's happening to me? What do you mean by outline? Me as a me, I can't touch it. I can't, like, it's very foggy. It's becoming intangible, this identity of mine. Similarly with the other people around me. The ideas that I have held about other people. The anger that I have held against some people. I'm kind of becoming more forgiving towards them. Okay. By the way, you can't be forgiving anyone unless that thing around them, truly forgiving, that is, that outline, that fence around them as a separate person upon which we put extra colors, extra layers of adjectives and things. Oh, they are mean, they're bad people, they're terrible people, they're not to be trusted, they're evil, etc., etc. All that requires the substrate of a self. We have to attribute it to them. We have to give it to them. And that's why so many people get shocked and even angry at times when the other person does something out of character that they thought should not be possible for this person to do, such as the opposite of what they did, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. So that extra layer that we put on things of substantiality, that also comes apart when you're practicing sati. That's why, by the way, Bahya was the quickest to attain with the shortest of instructions. When Lord Buddha says, Bahya, when seeing, there's just seeing. When hearing, there's just hearing. When sensing, whether smelling, tasting, touching, there's just sensing. And when there's thought coming in, there's just the thinking, and you're seeing the thinking. If you live like that, then you're no longer going to be in it. When you're not in it, you're not going to be of it. You're not going to be pulled this way and that. You're not going to be agitated. You're just going to see it the way it is. When you see things as they are, agitation will slip through your fingers as well. You're not going to be able to experience agitation. Why? Because you're more invested in sati and maintaining mindfulness of what's happening. And when that happens, passions disappear, Buddha says. You're no longer going to pick up a weapon, attack someone, whether that weapon is a verbal dagger, an actual dagger. No. But when there's no passion, which we call viraga, which is another word for fading away, there's disenchantment. There's this passion. There's cessation. And there's the ending, destruction of craving itself and of letting go of all assets, things that you held on to as valuable. All those things disintegrate. And awakening takes place. Those levels of higher understanding have to happen in the mind in order for awakening to take place. Okay? That has to be there. That's why we call it transformation of the person. Bhikkhus, I also stated how with the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of name and form, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of the six sense spheres. But do you also see it, or do you not? Because how through the cessation and elimination of name and form, this is nama rupa, what follows as a result is the cessation and elimination of the six sense spheres, salayatana. Or how is it that you understand this point? The way we understand this point, Bhante, is the following. The six sense spheres cease and are no more when name and form is eliminated and thus has ceased. Bhikkhus, I also stated how with the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of consciousness, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of name and form. But do you also see it, or do you not? Because how through the cessation and elimination of consciousness, what follows as a result is the cessation and elimination of name and form? Or how is it that you understand this point? The way we understand this point, Bhante, is the following. Name and form ceases and is no more when consciousness itself is eliminated and thus has ceased. You can also tell, like, there must have been some students, some bhikkhus sitting there as they're answering. And it's not like one person was answering. There's groups of, big group of bhikkhus, and the Buddha is addressing all of them. So there must have been one or two or more bhikkhus who were like, are we saying it right? Are we saying it right? So we're dealing with human, situations here. Contextually, we have to look at these are not happening in a vacuum. These are people. And sometimes it's not like they're completely crisp. Understanding is there, higher understanding, they're completely there. Sometimes some of them might have had some questions or like, and then as one person is answering, he's like, yeah, I get it. That's why we see so many repetitions. That's why we should never have ... dots in the suttas. Never any place for ellipses to show up when you have a teaching like this. With the complete cessation and the remainderless fading away of dynamic patterns or habitual drives, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of consciousness itself. But do you also see it, or do you not? Because how through the cessation and elimination of the dynamic patterns or habitual drives, what follows as a result is the cessation and elimination of consciousness? Or how is it that you understand this point? The way we understand this point, Bhante, is the following. Consciousness ceases and is no more when the dynamic patterns or habitual drives are eliminated and thus have ceased. Again, dynamic patterns is sankhara. Bhikkhus, I also stated how with the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of willful ignoring, there occurs also the complete cessation and remainderless fading away of the dynamic patterns or habitual drives. But do you also see it, or do you not? Because how through the cessation and elimination of willful ignoring, what follows as a result is the cessation and elimination of the dynamic patterns or habitual drives? Or how is it that you understand this point? The way we understand this point, Bhante, is the following. The dynamic patterns or habitual drives cease and are no more when willful ignoring itself is eliminated and thus has ceased. We will stop here because we got to section 10, summary of the section on cessation, which will continue next week. So. This is not a sutta, a discourse where you can go, okay, we covered it, okay. Who knows when I'll come back to it type of a, no. That would be unfair to you, to this great opportunity that you have to be born as a human, and you've made it. You have made it. You owe it to yourself for all the incredible amounts of good deeds you have done, and especially the good merits you must have placed in your past lives, plural. For the Dhamma, to understand the truth, to understand the meaning of life, to understand the depth of understanding itself, and to go the whole way, all the way to the finish line. Somewhere, somehow in your past, you wanted these things for yourself. So put all the difficulties, hurdles, the dramas of this life, identifications, reasons why you did this, not that. All these things are just not important. The fact remains you are here. What are you going to do about it? This is what we mean by having samvega, that urgency, sense of urgency to do something. And the Buddha has given us beautiful examples to capture that state. He says, imagine a man with hair on his head, hair on beard, that suddenly there's fire on his turban, in his hair, fire on his beard. Does this person ignore the fire? What does a person who is in flames, literally, do? A, to take care of it by jumping into a pool of water or running around, rolling around the sand or something, anything that's moist. At least get a towel or a blanket to put out the fire. B, ignore it. C, to delay it. D, B and C, to delay and ignore it. We are that person the Buddha was referring to. So long as we are not arahants yet, that's what we're doing. Plain and simple. This is not for us to feel, any blame or sense of guilt. We don't have that, as I was mentioning this week to someone else. You're just delaying and increasing the possibilities for you to still roam around the samsaric cycles. And as the Buddha says, there's more possibility, almost a guarantee, unless the person has attained to at least the first stage of awakening, the Sotapatti, there's a very, very high probability that we will be reborn into the lower realms. Or even as a human, let's say, if we really have done some wonderful deeds in this life, and we die with the aspiration of finding the Dhamma again in a human body, and that's the best body to be in, by the way, when you come across the Dhamma. A frog, a lizard, a bat, a cat, a dog, a giraffe will never be able to practice the Dhamma or even understand the Dhamma, by the way. As far as the Buddha is concerned, it's a wasted opportunity, being reborn in those realms other than a human. In fact, he's even more specific when he discusses even being born in the Book of the Eights, I think it was, the Buddha says, even if you're born as a human, but are born outside the borderline of Jambudvipa, of what is India, modern day India, and then he comes closer to the middle area, Madhya Pradesh, where you have that region where the Buddha lived and walked and taught, that region of India. Benares, Savatthi, Kushinara, etc., etc. You might be on the outskirts of that. You still will not benefit. And even he gets close. And he says, even if you're born in the vicinity of the Buddha, but you are born dumb, with mental retardation, for example, or a very, very healthy animal, that's a wasted opportunity. Or you are born at a time period when there is no Dhamma in the world, and you are born a healthy human being. He says that is also very, very sad. It's a big misfortune, because the most you're going to do is you're just going to do merits, do good deeds, this and that. You see now why I insist on us going beyond this good deed performance mode, which people have translated as the Dhamma itself. That is the work of Mara, not the Buddha. That is Mara, because it is persuading us to delay. Your hair is on fire. That's Samvega. So with that urgency, with that sense of urgency, we have to practice sati. You have to wake up in the morning and allow yourself to have joy for the fact that you're alive and kicking. And then take it easy. Whatever wrong things you've done yesterday, the type of sleep you might have had, it's okay. You're alive, you're awake, and you know better. What would the Buddha encourage me to do today? You can say that to yourself. And another thing about paticca samuppada in relation to that, because that's what we're covering today, go easy on yourself. Even though I said all these things, Samvega included, what I mean by that is not to overburden yourself, to pressure yourself, because that is going to create agitation. And that is not what the Buddha would want from us, because that's going to create panic. Remember, there's a huge difference between urgency and panic. The world keeps telling us, oh, they're the same. They're not the same. Urgency will bring forth in us wisdom. It will create wonderful things. Panic will never create anything, will never bring about anything good. Panic. Never. Try it. Look around you. So I will stop here and see if there are questions, comments. Any? Yes. Oh, well, one of you goes first. I guess Chitta, you go first.
Okay, thank you, Bante. I made that many notes. Actually, it's a bit all over the page now, so hopefully I'll be able to put a question together. You really helped me out with that last little part again, about allowing joy, just appreciating how rare this birth is actually. Because at the moment, I've got a job where it's like a bit of a toxic environment. It's not very pleasant, and like the radio's on all day. And I was contemplating what you were saying about Paticca Samuppada, and when you're explaining it, it's such a wonderful job, and you can live the experience. And I'm thinking, well, how how do I do this when I feel so stuck on the feeling of the radio is just it's on. I don't want to be here. It feels like obviously that state isn't permanent, but it feels that I've got a lot going on at the moment with even just trying to just basically forgive myself. Um, and my work it feels almost psychological and just not becoming a nice guy because my old tendencies would just compress and bury this away and just, be this nice guy at work. So that's almost becoming my work. So how do I bring the teacher Samuppada into this? And I realized I was thinking, okay, so maybe I can do some nice journaling, like carving out this future that you've recommended, to try and break the cycle a little bit, even at the start of the day. And I'm thinking, do we just need to start bringing like this other joyful element? So when these moments, even though it's persistent throughout the day with the radio being on, it doesn't consume us as much. And then you can maybe, you know,
Hmm.
put this into practice.
Hmm. Would it be different if you had no sense of hearing? You lost your hearing. Would you hear the radio?
No, I wouldn't hear it.
Would it agitate you?
No, no.
You would be clueless. In fact, unless you looked at the people who are just maybe if it has a certain beat, people moving their head bobbing like this, or maybe feeling the ground if it has a strong bass to it. Otherwise, oh, what if you were the first person who's making the radio? You just build the transistors inside, and you're the very, very first model, the only model on the planet where you just made a radio, and there's a broadcast station somewhere, and you're just turning the knobs. I know I'm going back, the 19th century, or just with the knobs and all that. And then you get the right hertz, right frequency, and all of a sudden, oh, and it's loud. Would you treat the sound coming out of the radio the same way as chitta relates to the sound of the radio when you are the person who's invented that, or Somebody gave you this wonderful machine and so what would there be a difference? Yes. So you're nodding yes, affirmative. This is another way of understanding emptiness, voidness, that the Buddha made a point that the bhikkhus understand and teach. Unfortunately, he also makes the prediction that in the future, he says, the bhikkhus will not teach sunyata, not teach emptiness, because it's not easy and it's not favored by the common people. But he says that's another evidence that the Dhamma is dying at that stage. So bring emptiness to your experience, because how is it possible? If it's something so absolute, it's a terrible, obnoxious sound that you're hearing. I'm not denying the fact that it is. Not at all. But you are there, you placed yourself, you signed some contracts, you are willingly waking up to go there to pay your bills, to take care of your responsibilities. And yeah, it's kind of ruining the whole atmosphere for you. It's, but how is this related to the Dhamma? Oh, I must be, maybe this is like a cabaret or a pub or a club. I mean, am I at a concert? All these things are just, as they say, reality boxes. Your reality box. You created, again, starting with something factual. Yes, there is noisy. Well, there's noise. And if you allow it to, it will affect you unless you put your mind somewhere else. Of course, you still have to deal with the sound coming in. So what I would recommend, something practical, if it works, maybe you go to your supervisor and mention, can we tone it down? Can we lower the volume? If not, okay, is it okay for me to wear some earplugs? There's some that I wear, like, silicone at night, because sometimes there's noise here. And some places they play music. So, you're not going to have the world change for you. Because ultimately, as far as the Dhamma is concerned, that's never going to happen. It's like that man who wants to hold the whole world, to get rid of all the jagged surfaces on the planet. So he starts buying leather and this and that, and starts wanting to kill animals so that he can use their hide to cover up the whole ground, to make them feel smooth, until some friends of his come in and say, give me a piece of that leather. And they cut out two pieces and they make shoes or sandals out of it, and they have him wear it. He says, go around, walk around anywhere you want. Walk around the jagged surface of the earth. Will you feel the surface? Painful surface against your skin? He says, no. Why? You have what you need to protect yourself. So the Dhamma is there to protect you, because it will also to protect others. But there is the illusion that we have that it's supposed to, this is improper. I would never do this to others. Why are they doing that? All this is part of conceit. Plain and simple. And it keeps you agitated. If you were to ask me another way, the same question, what should I detect first if I'm on the path that is kusala versus akusala? I would say check to see if there's agitation anywhere taking place in you. Remember, that person over there who is responsible, or who's putting the radio like that, in their mind, they are not doing anything wrong. So do you see the relative reality? This is what I also meant by emptiness. Because the worrisome world that you're in fact, that's paralyzing you to perform at your job, it's so saturated, it's so real, it's so hard and solid for you, it's non-existent to the other. Hence, it's empty, it's baseless. Because if it is truly absolute, it has to have the same relevancy, it has to have the same meaning for the other person as well. But it's not, because you're the person who is being hurt by this, affected by this, agitated by this. So that's the quickest way to know that you are not on the path of Dhamma. When you are agitated. Yes, the noise is there. Yes, it is agitating, you might even say. But that does not give you the freedom or the carte blanche to go ahead and say, then my being agitated is valid, so I should be agitated. That's not what the Buddha is teaching. So can you allow the sixth sense basis, in this case hearing, to bring in the information, the contact to happen without you getting agitated? What have I been saying today a lot, mentioning a lot, the technique that the Buddha says, uses a lot? Sati. When you're agitated, it means there's not enough sati. So turn the focus, turn the camera, turn the microscope back at you, not at them. Because this is how we have the different forms of conceit, as I said, because it makes us feel, in a way, subtle way, superior to them, the common folk, the vulgar people over there. Oh, those are the Puthujjana. Who listens to that kind of noise? Ah. Oh, his mind must be all over the place. These are terrible people. You might not be saying these things, but definitely you're feeling the ramifications of those thoughts, of those feelings. So, easy way, get some silicone earplugs, okay, because they last a long time and they're not like those spongy ones, because they can over time they can hurt you, or cause discomfort at least. And or if you go taking some very official exams, let's say, when you're taking an exam, there's noise outside. So they give you earplugs, and they give you a set of noise canceling headphones. If they're allowed to listen to music, can you be allowed to listen to your kind of music? Because it's a different style of music. Maybe approach your supervisor and bring that up and say, I don't want to create chaos. I don't want to, I want to stay on good terms with everyone here, and I don't want to take anything from anyone. But is it okay for me to listen to my kind of music because it's affecting my work? No boss wants to hear that the environment is affecting their performance at the workplace. They will bend over backwards, most people, to say, yeah, sure, I want to make you be productive so I can make more money from you. Okay, so I have to make sure you're okay as an employee. That might also be something you could say and do. But again, the key word is, am I agitated? And if I am, I need to practice some more. And thank the other person who's causing me to have this agitation, the situation that is. Because they are simply sharpening your mindfulness. You know, like a whetstone against the knife blade, you know, the tip of a knife. That's the only way you can sharpen it. It needs something hard, and that's a hard environment. Does this work?
Yeah, actually, Bante, the church over the road is has got a festival going on today.
Ah,
And when you were explaining the emptiness, like I became aware of the music, which is again quite ridiculous. But it actually I recognize what you were saying. You know, that's just my own judgment or coming on top of the actual situation. It's not the music isn't the problem actually. So
hmm,
thank you for that, Bante.
sure. As I was mentioning to you today, earlier this week, Kusala, he came in, and unbeknownst to us, and of course to him, there were suddenly they announced that we went into the web just to see what's happening, events, because we don't know the events around this area, the neighborhood. Suddenly we found out that, oh, from tonight there will be concerts in the city. And what that means is very loud noise will be playing until the wee morning hours. sometimes until 4 a.m. So kusala has been exposed to that. So I think he's smiling a little bit. But as a practitioner, we have to work towards not looking for such situations that are uncomfortable. No, but when they do occur, and they will occur, so long as we are here in this body, there will be friction. There will be situations where things at least are not going to go as we plan them to. But that is an opportunity. Isn't that what old age does? Sickness, isn't that? I mean, who wants to get sick? Who wants to get old? These are things that are very uncomfortable. Who wants to lose loved ones? But what do? We use all of these things as conduits, as ways to understand the Dhamma on a personal level, because you're not going to get more personal than that noise piercing through your ears. That's a great opportunity. What if it was something heavier? You're walking to work and somebody drops a refrigerator from the 3rd-story building and it lands on your foot. That's going to be a dent on your day, on your life. That's another way. Well, at least you could say, at least the I'm not at the concert in front of those huge speakers, 6-meter long, huge speakers. I'm not there, at least. So you minimize the effect that it's having and the interpretation of it by creating something neutral, such as also another technique would be bringing your attention to something neutral, like the breath, away from the mind. Something neutral. Maybe the way you feel your heartbeat when the beat is strong, or when the music is, or some part of the song, or whatever type of it is, music. There might be certain physical manifestations, the impact of it that's having. So you leave the song, or you leave the music, you leave whatever about it, details, and you bring the attention to the khaya. This is key. This is definitely part of the khayanupassana. Because if you're able to maintain sati of the body in such a demanding situation, at work where you have to be at a certain level of performance, people are looking at you and your work, so you can't underperform, then it's a challenging situation. It's a perfect environment. It takes your sati to the next level. And lastly, a very crucial thing to remind yourself is, and by the way, this goes for every one of you and every one of the listeners. The details might be different. Who cares? Contents of specifics are not important. I know all of you can benefit from this because you have your own type of situation going on that is unpleasurable, painful even. So when you look at the sound and this experience, and you say to yourself, what am I getting from this? Ask yourself, what is the Dhamma teaching me from this experience? Can I extract some valuable Dhammic experience from this? Can I extract some Dhammic, not to belittle it or sound banal, some Dhammic juice out of this? And I guarantee it, if it's uncomfortable and you're bringing in sati, and you have the tolerance to stand your ground and ask this question from yourself, and all your instincts are kicking in, reactionary attitude is coming in, and anger is coming up, and you pause and you ask such a question, that means you are definitely in the right direction. You're on the path. And then you're going to see that the feeling dissipates. In fact, you're starting to look for, how come they're not, they're lowering the volume? How come they're not playing the music today? What happened? Because you're also putting out the energy for the noise to happen, by the way. Anticipatory dread. This is the, same premise as law of attraction, but unfortunately you're attracting something that is unpleasant. But the universe, it's still gravity. You're pulling in the possibilities. If you come in and you say, okay, I'm excited, I want to see how far I can go with the noise today and still maintain equanimity, because that is at the bottom line. When I say you shouldn't be allow yourself to get agitated, I'm talking about bringing in upekkha. We will not attain without upekkha. So those colleagues of yours are giving you every possibility for you to attain arahanthood. Thank you is an order from you to them. Okay? Hattaka, you had a question?
The answer has, my question has been answered. Thank you.
I'm glad.
Yeah, thank you for Tita's question. It's almost very similar. I'm just using myself as a case study. Yes, but there are times when I meditate on my habitual tendency. For example, like toxic workplace or relationship with people. And I thought, like, is this a repeating pattern? It's been, in this cycle all my life or all my past life. And I also thought about this concept of the Candana, clinging, like, oh, it's we're clinging on to this situation over and over again, having a fallout from friendship or relationship with other people. So this two concept has been like blurred, like upadana and sankhara. So I've been meditating on it, looking at it. It becomes clearer and clearer. So I'm putting a sati on it.
Yeah.
Before that, I thought they are nearly the same. These two concepts. But that question has been answered.
They're definitely connected. And could you mute? Attaka. So they're definitely connected. Of course, one is much grosser, much more tangible, and hard to not notice. And that is, of course, the tenacious grabbing. Let's say when they're playing the music and I am getting more and more agitated and I'm having the internal dialogue in my mind. How could they do this? How could we function in this workplace? Are they dumb? Are they insensitive? Are they stupid? Or, don't they even have the courtesy to ask in their mind as like, well, I wonder if he likes this kind of music. They didn't even ask me that. What's going on? I am definitely holding on to this as an unpleasant experience. I am tenaciously grabbing. But the way it began was tiny little, almost like a tiny little moth or butterfly coming in through the window. That's the sankhara, a thought. A mental image that you tolerate. Yeah, it's because, hey, the six senses are picking up the noise. I'm not denying it, it's there. But the sankhara starts sending down its roots, and this is happening extremely quick. It moves from being a thought to being speech. And when we say vachi sankhara or speech sankhara, we usually are referring to the subvocal speech, what you are saying, because we give voice to our thoughts, which brings them from a state of almost abstraction to action, physical action. as the person gets the baseball bat and goes towards the radio and then starts smashing it. That's the physical. Or even the verb, when the verbal moves into the physical and you now are yelling at the person, saying some bad words to them, insulting them and saying all these things. By the way, they might be completely clueless that any of these things are going on around them. They might think that, oh, they're doing such a favor because they're entertaining the rest of the team. Because, well, meanwhile, nothing could be further from the truth, for as far as you're concerned. So as far as the sankhara, then, we give it pass, a hall pass. We give it, as I said a few times, carte blanche. We give it, we permit it to be there. Not only that, when you cannot win with sankharas, you cannot beseech them to behave in a certain way. You cannot ask them to be different. You have to act them out, or just watch them and say, I will not say that internally, even. Subvocally, you cut the light, you cut the gasoline pipe, you cut their access to your behavior. Now, unfortunately, most people, I know I was when I came across the deeper understanding of sankhara, when you see in the suttas how the Buddha is explaining sankhara as being both positive and negative on the surface. That's why I said kusala and akusala sorts of sankhara. But they are still sankhara. That's why a person goes and wants to do, as I said, good deeds, or even thinking about good things, but the mind is getting agitated. Even though they turn around and say, hey, calm down, this is good. I say this to some people, I know I struggled with this, when constantly I was engaged with Dhamma. I was like, okay, hold on. The Buddha in the Dhammapada says, even if you take a little bit of Dhamma and you focus on that, you practice it, you apply it, that's enough. I don't have to know all the suttas. I don't have to follow every single principle or keep repeating it in my head. Okay, what were the 5 spiritual faculties? Okay. Saddha, Vidya, Sati, Samadhi. No, calm down. You're agitating. But it started as sankhara. So even the positive or kusala sankhara have avidya at the base. That's why they're part of the paticca samuppada. Paticca samuppada is not about exposing the akusala nature of life. It doesn't matter. Paticca samuppada is about removing the veil entirely over conditionality to expose everything. Because even the akusala, the kusala form or aspect of sankharas still maintain us in wrong view, such as sakkaya ditthi, the identification, the wrong belief in a self, I-making, mind-making. This is me, this is who I am. And that's why the Dhamma is the only path that breaks even through that, because you have other traditions where the person is identifying oneself as dedicated to some god or to some practice. Even Baka, the Brahma god, he believed that he was the absolute. He knew everything, he thought, until Lord Buddha went and proved otherwise to him. We've covered Baka Brahmas in the, I think 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago in the suttas. Does that help, Hataka? Okay, you're nodding. Good. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Okay. Let us transfer some merits. Akasatha chabumata devanaga mahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu lokasasanam. Akasatha chabumata devanaga mahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu desanam. Akasatha Chabumata Devanagamahiddhika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Mam Paranti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May your sense of Samvega deepen every day, every hour. May you constantly find joy in your heart, despite your situation, despite your whatever conditions you might be in, that might make you feel like there's nothing to be joyful about. There is, always. So create that space of safety around your mind, because no one who is truly sad can attain. No one who is cherishing and holding on to their pain, their painful past, their fears, their hang-ups. No one who's holding on and attaching themselves to their lamentation, their sorrow, can really attain. And this has everything to do with you looking at yourself with kindly eyes, with warm eyes. And with that, there's the second step. Otherwise, it turns into grotesque sense of self-importance of some sort, self-indulgence. No. With that, you need to have the cure of being factual, realist with yourself, with your abilities, and with your willingness to cut yourself loose from yesterday, your version of yesterday, your thinking of yesterday, who you were, what you've done. You have to let go of that version of you. Otherwise, you are very much shackled up, tied down, with nowhere to move other than being stuck. So there's no fantasizing about you becoming something when you're not. That's why Dhamma is not a heady process, engagement. It's something you have to do with yourself, with your life, but you have to come from a place of sukha, the Buddha says, happiness, with being who you are, where you are, but then looking forward, being kind, having metta and compassion towards yourself, and willing to move out of your comfort zone. Otherwise, you are fooling yourself, plain and simple. The Buddha was very harsh when he needed to be, to shock, to jolt, to pull the student out of their inertia. Today, we live in a world where people are very, very soft, want this. And the Buddha says in the Maha Sutta, which we've covered several years ago, he says, I'm not here to baby you, Ananda. I can't treat you like a potter deals with his wet clay as he's making pottery. The way he has to be very careful with his nails, making sure there's no sharp edges, no solid nor hard way of holding it. It has to be extremely soft. He says, I'm not the potter. I can't treat you like wet clay, so don't expect that. I have to be harsh when I have to be. And that's what the Buddha did. But that's also what we have to take example from him to pull ourselves from our inertia. That sometimes is very, very necessary. So make sure you're doing that. But remember what we started with, sukha has to be there. Otherwise, you're too heavy-handed. It's wrong. You're going to damage. Remember, this path is the Majjhima Pada, the middle path. So make sure you keep yourself on the middle path every day. May the blessings of the Triple Gem be with you and all your loved ones. May you constantly go deeper and deeper and deeper than you've ever done before, you've ever gone before. May your heart be light. Give it more and more freedom to breathe, less and less allowing for it to become agitated, and taste the deepest levels of samadhi. and panya through your sila and dana, taking it easy while maintaining the course. Until next time. Sukhiyota.